Anyway, in the meantime, I was talking to the richer Muslims. They're not kind of rich. They big rich. So I say, hey man, what y'all can do is, they're a little feisty, so you can mellow it off, and blend it, and actually help them. Because when I was there at that time in '98, I went to 3 courtrooms. It looked like it was in Oakland. I said this is like 30 years ago, 68 in Oakland. One court, the leader. Second court, somebody else. Another court, all the brothers was going to court, and they were isolated. So I said, I was trying to give them advice. So I said, look, you can't do nothing to the man because you don't have no proof. But they do. And if we don't do nothing, I said, you got to use Sharia. You got to just go around and you got to have witnesses. And then I was showing them the hadith. I said, look here. This is rules of trials and all that. That's what it said. I said, you got to do that stuff. So then I said, we'll skip the part about the super rich guys. When I'm talking to him, he's telling me these coloreds and these guys here, they're emotional. They get everybody in trouble. They this, that, and another. And he's talking to a nigga, and he's not realizing that he's telling me the same thing everybody say about us. That's the way I'm looking at it. The way he's talking about them. Which are other Muslims. They're good Muslims. They just need a little help. That's the thing that, anyway, with Pagan, they invited me a couple more times. So I was showing them about how you get along. At that time, they had the Negro, pre-Columbian Negro. What's the Abdullah Hakim Quick. So they brought Abdullah Hakim Quick to Cape Town, the Islamic jurisdiction country, because a lot of them went to Saudi Arabia to school, and when I came to South Africa, I was making such inroads, they wanted another person that just sounded like us. Because that sound, that Negro sound, hey man, people like it. You think don't nobody care? Hey man, they like that Negro sound. So they did their research and they brought the judicial conference, brought Abdullah Hakim Quick there. The last time I seen Abdullah Hakim Quick was at ISNA in '88, and I called him a snitch and a tattletale. And so they was going to have us meet him, the judicial conference. So I was telling the brother with me, you would call him an Indian, but he would be some mixture. They can tell when you're not a full Indian. So anyway, he said, I said, watch this. When we went to visit him, when he walked in, I stood up, I said, oh, it's so good to see you. I gave him a big hug, and he gave me a big hug, and so I was looking, he was sitting there. I said, this is hypocrisy. That's how y'all gotta act with all these people. You gotta smile and give them a big hug. You can't scare them to death. You know what I mean? You're in a struggle, so you can't scare everybody to death, right? Because half the Muslims will be turning you in, and you're talking about blowing up all the Muslims, right? Okay, anyway, the point I was making was, you have to know your environment a little bit. You have to know the people in your environment a little bit. And you have to be kind of aware of the transitional periods, stages of growth in the Islamic movement. That's what we call it. But this stages of growth means that there's stages in everything, right? It's kind of an evolution. So, you know, I can see where they got that stuff in Hinduism about what did they call it when you transmigration of the soul? What do they call it when you go from stage to stage?
Reincarnation?
Reincarnation.
Okay.
Well, they say if you come and you do all right, you get to go up a little. If you don't, you gotta go back to being a dog or something like that, right? You know, so, but I could see how they come up with that type of thing. When you look at the human being do evolve, right? Or like the Quran says, the highest of the high, or the lowest of the low. But anyway, so in closing, we're just going forward on this one, and we're not taking Noah's answer. They can do whatever they want, and we're starting with what we have, and we've been this way before, many times. We talked about this type of language here, the great recovery. A setback ain't nothing but a setup for a comeback. We've been making comebacks for years. Most of it was some of it was in Jahiliyyah, some of it was Islamically. In all of our moves, we have chosen for ourselves. So that Brother Tufayl can get his Sadaqah Jariyah, we going into this with butt kicking in mind. Yeah, we're not gonna, boss man and already, he didn't have it, we're not observing anymore. This is not a period of observation. This is an operational action period. And we're starting the same way we started before. Like, this may not be nothing, this is $5,000. We're starting here to do all of this big talk with this. This is all we got. Ain't got another dime. We'll start right here. So y'all saw it. If we make it, we done started here, and all the stuff, you can't come and say them niggas ain't got no sense, they steal, they do this. I just showed you. We got $5,000 and we're gonna whoop boss man. Yes, we are. Or we're gonna have him strategically boxed in because it's our time. We already paid the cost of observation. And we got our own stuff we're gonna bring with it. It's called fighting weight. You ain't heard that in a long time. Fighting weight is like come down 20 pounds. The weight you feel, well, now fighting weight for me is still up there, but I'm getting down. Why? Because the discipline, the self-control, and all that stuff to go with it. We ain't never been out of shape, never. But we ain't in the shape it takes. The physical, the psychological shape, you know, when you do anything, they always say, get in physical shape, because it works on your psychic. You feel better, you test. When I took the chief of police test in 1970, that's what it said. You know, in those buildings they have chief police test. Well, I was studying the police, so I said, I'll take the police test, right? And it says, before you take the test, get up early in the morning, get good physical fitness, right? And for all of that stuff.
It says that when you doing public speaking.
Public speaking, all of that. When you do anything, if you're in good shape, it goes better. Right? You feel better. So we get it in fighting weight, that's all, fighting weight, maybe 20 pounds less, that's enough for now. And just to, see, if you stay in shape all the time, it's like, if they have Navy SEALs, all those people, they don't be in super shape all the time because it's not that good for you. So it's just like if you stay in pinpoint, perfect shape all the time. But if you get in good shape, you cruise a long time, then you kind of cut down a little bit, but you're still in good shape. Then when you get back in good shape, you feel good. So you got to modulate yourself. You know, you got to modulate yourself. And that's what we've been doing. The spirit of observation, just cruising. So, we're asking Allah, not for ourselves, but to accept this action on behalf of Brother Tufayl, or Imam Tufayl, Strategic Command Center. That's what we're thinking about, and that's where we're headed. And we don't particularly care. We want everybody to go, but you can only control yourself. I'm saying that's what we get ready to do. Anybody want to go? There's plenty of room. In fact, there's plenty of room. I hope that made some sense. Anyway, are there any questions or any comments?
Yeah, well, there was this, on the topic of hikmah, a sister had said that Muslims don't use their hikmah, but would rather do nonsense things to shame our prophets, peace be upon them.
To do what?
But they'd rather do nonsense, not just nonsense,
Oh, okay.
you know, to shame, our prophets, peace be upon them.
Yeah.
And I had, well, you answered it later, but it was, you had brought up early on during the talk about how it's like a lot of these, say, Congress people and other, duly elected officials, what they lack isn't necessarily knowledge. What they lack is courage. And I was like, so I had written down a question to, ask, which would have been, well, how do we teach people courage if the problem ain't knowledge, problem's courage? But then you later, you elaborated that, you
courage is something, courage is just like goals. Like, for instance, you don't start people out with a goal way out there. You just start with something simple. Right. If it's 100 pounds of truth, just tell 1 pound of truth. I don't know. Right? Just like lifting weights, and after they lift that up, it makes them sore and everything. And then you say, well, just try 5 pounds of truth. 5 pounds of truth, they get to working with that. Get to working with that. It's comfortable. Say, hey man, I bet you can do 20 pounds of truth. 20 pounds of truth, man, that means just give it a try. And pretty soon, they've gained strength and ability by small goals at a time. Not anything you're going to have, you have to cut it up in small pieces. You can't eat a whole steak or one, just can't eat it. You got to cut it up so that it can be easily consumed and digested. I hope that halfway answered the question.
Does. Yeah.
Well, how about you often talk about being contented. So contentment, it leads to being thankful. And those people are doing something to get a reward. We're not looking for any reward, but Allah's, pleasure. So, that's something that you
No, contentment is a big deal. Now, where we are right now is we're still content we're very content, but we're active, we're making our contentment active, other than an observational contentment. And imagine, like, you've been to all these meetings, imagine when we say something and then we get a response from the system, year in and year out, you know. And when you can forecast this, that is, it's a little different now. The difference now is that we're not trying to, this is not psychological guerrilla warfare. What we're doing now, we're not, you know, this contentment is as deep as the original contentment, you know, that you get when you make Allah's work your leisure, and He closed the door to poverty, you know, and all of that. Okay. On the thing about wealth, when I was in Oakland, if I made $5,000 a day, that was back in the 60s, I would say, in fact, one of my brothers in second in command came in. Yeah, I said, man, how much we make today? He said, 5,000. This is in the 60s now. I was young, I was sad. Oh man. I mean, I got over it, but we was used to making about 10,000 per day. That's how we could do all of that stuff and reinvest it in the community because of the money we was making. So right now, we talk about starting a whole big show with $5 grand. $5 grand don't even pay the bills for the, no, $5 grand it don't pay nothing to them. But we're starting at, that's where we're starting at. Why? That's where we started before. We always started with we never used old money. New money, that's all. This is the only new money we got, semi-new. Nothing old. And every time, so the technique we're using is over 50 years old. But we're just using it for Islam. And the accumulation, can you imagine how much knowledge and information you accumulate in 50 years? Imagine how much junk you could accumulate in your house if you just collected stuff for 50 years. You couldn't walk, you'd be like one of the people on TV, you know, the people that got
Right, all that stuff.
pack rats.
Yeah.
In jail, we always had a pack rat or two, you know, they just collected, and the police would, you gotta get rid of that junk. And they would get rid of it, they'd come back in 2 weeks and they'd recollect more junk. You know, so imagine how much good you can collect in 50 years. How much knowledge, information, and all that you can collect in 50 years. It's unbelievable. Anyway, if there's no more questions or comments, then we, as we said, we dedicate this program to Brother Tufayl Abdullah, or Imam Tufayl Abdullah. And we want to make all of this a success. Well, no, that's the wrong word, because they got success means different stuff for them. Success, we want to make it falah. So falah could mean remembering Allah, you know, in fact, not to be drifting, Kad aflaha al-mu'minun, the believers, the way they translate it, will be successful. But the way it's actually in Arabic, the believers are already successful. So remember the hadith, if you want to do your niyyah, if you want to do a good deed, you get the reward for wanting to do it. If you do it, alhamdulillah. Imagine we get the reward, we want to do this. So we done already got our pay. Our actions here, we done already got it. Because this is what we want to do. We're talking about it, we're encouraging, we done already got a reward. Everything else is just gravy. So, are there any more questions or comments? If not, we thank y'all very much. And tomorrow, I guess, is Salatul Juma. And, Akula Kali Hala, Astaghfirullah.